أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to On the Couch with me, Farida, Rabia and Soki and Zinzi. This is where you hear the difference on 100.4 FM. On the Couch, together in Lately in Land and Housing is your weekly show that discusses current affairs and political landscape pertaining to housing, evictions, equitable access to land and tenure security. Today we will cover the story of working class through the lens of Langa that's celebrating its centenary. In studio we have Inam Kula, who's an architect, and we have Carden Hendricks, who is the leader of Reclaim the City. Good evening, ladies, and welcome to On the Couch.
Good evening, and thank you for having us.
Good evening.
So, as per tradition, we start with a scenario. So, for over 100 years, the government has been removing poor working class black and brown people living in urban areas to isolated relocation camps on the edge of the city. They did this in apartheid, they did this during apartheid, and they're still doing it. In the 1920s, even before the Groups Act, Langa was designated to segregate black African community from the urban areas in isolation from the broader economy and close enough to serve as a labor reservoir. Today, the far-flung relocation camps and predominantly accommodate black and colored people are still being built by the city of Cape Town and continue to perpetuate spatial injustices while creating poverty traps. Cape Town, a city divided. The Centenary pain. Our lines are open 0786 10 11 12 for your thoughts and comments. Ladies, this pain that we speak of, break it down for us so we can fully understand this 100 years.
Okay, yeah, I think I'll start. I think the story of Langa, is a story of dispossession. It's a story of displacement, subordination, and, treating black people as subjects. So you have a township which was formed obviously formally after the Urban Areas Act of 1923, but essentially in this township, besides the segregation, which is something obviously like inhumane, it was putting people in sort of modern day concentration camps, and it was also about not being concerned about the conditions of life of people, but rather how they can contribute to the exchange value that they can bring to the economic cause, And this is also deep because what happened during that time is that it fundamentally altered one state of being, because in architecture and in spatial planning, your surrounding and your environment informs who you become. So essentially, it wanted to subordinate black people and treat them as, inferior and people that have no value in life. And I think fast forward to 2023, nothing has really changed, So the quality of life in Langa is still not that of someone or something that you could qualify as good. And also if you look at sort of the education systems that you find in Langa, the crime and the violence that you get, the opportunities to jobs, is no different to what was happening back when Langa was created.
It's the cycle that continues,
Sure.
basically. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, we're in 2023 and people are still being pushed out to the periphery. People are still being pushed out to inhumane conditions, and all because that we are being told that that's the only alternative accommodation that our city has to offer poor and working class people. We're already in the middle of a deepening housing crisis, and not only a housing crisis, but an affordability crisis. We saw during COVID-19 how people had lost their income, and even more people were evicted displaced, and rendered homeless. I mean, Cape Town has a housing backlog of over 600,000 people. And then when you look at the amount of homeless people on the streets of Cape Town, on the streets of our city, there are about 14,000 homeless people on the streets of Cape Town. And so there just is not enough alternatives for people who are being displaced, for people who are being dispossessed in our city.
The homeless situation is because I when people mention homelessness and they're like they have to get off, the streets. They're making our city look bad. It doesn't look like Cape Town City is one of the best cities. Then there's conversations around that they actually want to be there, and we did offer them that. But do you feel that this spatial injustice is also affecting homeless people? And that's why we see them where they are.
Yes, of course. I agree it is affecting them. I mean, very recently, the residents of the Willow Arts Collective, I mean, they are subject to an eviction order that was granted by the Cape Town Magistrates Court, by Magistrate Khan. And the Willow Arts Collective, they rejected being pushed out or evicted or relocated to areas like Campis and Bosasa in Umfuleni. And when the residents visited these newly built relocation camps or relocation sites, one would be met with what looks like a poverty trap. I mean, in conditions they are totally appalling. And people are building zinc sheet houses in areas outside the urban periphery. So the poor are still subjected to inhumane conditions. This is a repetition of the past in our democratic dispensation. Because, I mean, when you look at how inner city housing has been built or how it's been developed, since 1994, there has been no inner city housing built. There has been no social housing built. And so all of these promises that are made by this government still needs to be realized.
Now, in remembering 100 years of existence, which simply means it's a way of acknowledging that our past always permeates our present and our future, and then thinking about the fact that a township like Langa was created to treat a group of people like they were nothing and made sure that they believed that and stayed there. So there's no development there. So now thinking about now what you're saying about this court order and all of that, and then people actually going into such a location, and then you saying that it's a poverty trap and the conditions are appalling. What can be done? What must be done? Because Is that the thinking of the city when if we go into court to fight this matter, and so our solution is that we send you back to the trap?
So that's the thinking of the city. But in this particular case, Farida, the court ordered that they be provided temporary emergency accommodation at the Kulemborg Safe Space or night shelter in the city centre for a period of 18 months. So while this is a step forward in terms of location and so-called supportive services offered, I mean, the balance of the offer still leaves much to be concerned about or worried about. I mean, for instance, people are forced to sleep on top of one another in these open spaces. Unless they are elderly or they are sick, They cannot stay at the facility during the daytime. So there's some kind of lockout system during the daytime. And I mean, we see how really people are then pushed back to the streets.
And I'm assuming that organizations like Dufunukwazi, yourself, Reclaim the City, are all trying to get people off the street and offer them a sense of dignity. But it requires this partnership between organizations and government, and I'm assuming also private sector, to recognize the problem. Now, in recognizing the problem, what would it take outside of social housing and the offers that is available with regards to social housing and affordability and so on? What would it take for, say, us to get people in spaces where they can, where they have access?
So, at the moment, the alternatives that are being offered by the city are appalling, and it will push people back into homelessness. And communities need to come together, Farida, to organize together. We need to hold public meetings and hold officials to account for this act of pushing people into deepening poverty and pushing people deeper into this housing crisis or into homelessness. And so across Cape Town, for example, the housing crisis across Cape Town has deepened. Most of Cape Town faces this housing crisis. And I mean, social movements like Reclaim the City and many others have actually came together in solidarity to fight for affordable housing, to hold government officials to account, to build this housing, to say to our city that if we're a caring city, then we would build housing for poor and working class people. There's so much public land that is unused around the city. And so why can the city not use that public land or give people access to that land to build housing? That's what we're saying, and that is what our protest is about. Our protest is about fighting for affordable housing in well-located areas, not on the peripheries, and not pushing people back into poverty and pushing people back into inhumane conditions.
Inaman, I know you wanted to.
Sure. Thanks, Farida. I'd just like to add to that. I think it's not also just about accommodation, but it's also about the environment in which you live in. So, I mean, if we look at South Africa today, nothing in our environment teaches a young child that they are African. Not the buildings, not the names of the streets, everything that is represented in our environment reminds us of our brutal past that subordinated us. So when we create these alternative cities, when we create these alternative environments and new developments, these are things that we need to consider. And I think as the youth of Langa, although there's poverty, there has been people that have taken initiatives to create facilities that will offer employment in their townships, and also just to make it a better place, So the people of Langa have also capitalized on the tourism sector and have also, looked at a great deal of like arts and culture, because Langa has a huge history of arts and culture and sports, so this can be seen in initiatives such as the Bridges for Music Academy, 16 on Liratole, which is like an art gallery in a township, which is unheard of, in South Africa, and other like restaurants such as Jordan's Ways of Cooking. So, the youth of Langa are starting to think about what can these environments actually look like. So not just to provide people with shelter, but also to create spaces in which we could start thinking about the future of South Africa and our society in general.
As you were speaking, that was actually a question that I was going to ask, because places like Langa, Bandieville, Kailicha, wherever on the Cape Flats, if we look to the government, I think government has this unique way where they make you wait for a very long time. As many of us know, many people who are waiting for houses for like 30 years, 40 years, 17, and so on. So when in our environments like Langa, could we then, even though this was a place used to put one down, can we look forward to like art galleries, as Inam is speaking, and changing the way our environment is, and sort of building clinics in there, offering better schools, or can we do that as we wait for the city to sort of come on board?
I mean, of course, communities are building their own alternatives right where they are living. Some are occupying land, some are occupying buildings, like the old Woodstock Hospital or Sissy Gore House, where I'm actually a resident. We are building an alternative. And yes, we are planning our future there. And we have been busy with a design process for the past 3 or 4 years. And this design process was started with the city of Cape Town in 2019. The city of Cape Town then abandoned the process. And in 2021, they went to court to seek a court-ordered survey of the occupiers living at Sissy Gore House. And communities are building their own alternatives. And the problem is that the city sees poor people as criminals. The city criminalizes poor people. The city criminalizes homeless people too, with their laws, with their policies. And the one thing that I'd like to say is that for us, Farida and Mpilo, what really matters is where we live. We want to live close to economic and social opportunities. We want to live close to what the city has to offer. It cannot be that we're living in a city that is for the wealthy, a city that is unequal, a city that does not look at the needs of the poor and the workers of the city, on whose backs the city was actually built. So I'd like to end there and to say that where we live matters, yes. And the city needs to know that. Cape Town needs to know that where people live matters. And we should commit ourselves to reaching out in our own communities, to reaching out across Cape Town, coming together in solidarity and fighting for access to housing. Also, housing is not just a human right. And I'd want to end there to say that housing is a human necessity more than it is just a human right.
There are a few comments that came through, but before I read them, there's in the brief that we got, it speaks to this poor spatial planning and architecture, what has created conditions such as crime, violence, and substance abuse to thrive in townships. Despite the unbearable conditions of the township, people have been able to create beauty in the face of this ugliness. And so perhaps when one is forced to utilize what you have and make something good out of it, the government is like, oh, well, you're thriving, you're doing well. That it seems like you're fine there. Right, and it's been like that for some time. But this listener is questioning the fact that we are still blaming our history, and to what you said in terms of there's no identity, like South African identity within our places. So I cannot relate to what is not truly mine, and then also saying that it seems as social movements and organizations like Ndifunokwasi is actually encouraging lawlessness and vagrancy. And perhaps this listener is upset. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think in terms of the lawlessness, I think that, law is always subject to the times, So I think if we speak about lawlessness, we must speak about the law that removed people from certain areas, whether it was District 6, whether it was Simon's Town, and moved them to concentration camps where they lived in matchboxes. We must take it to the lawlessness of 1652, where people, there was a genocide of a people and their land was taken away. So, lawlessness, we can look at it in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, colonialism and what apartheid did still permeates within the present, And it's something that I tried to reiterate earlier on, to say that the conditions in Langa in 1923 are not different to those that you find today. And that's precisely because if you are a child growing up in Langa or in any township in Cape Town, you don't have opportunities to go to the right schools. And secondly, once you make it out of the schooling system, the opportunities only lie within the economic cores, which is in the CBD, right? And so it is difficult for a child to even get into institutions of higher learning within the education system that we have currently. And then furthermore, people use probably majority of their money to transport themselves or to commute to and fro the townships into the CBD in order to work. So how then do people move themselves out of these poverty traps when basically everything or the system that is found here is basically making them stuck into these poverty traps?
I suppose that's where social movements come in to give us the answer to why. But another comment came in saying, "Salam, everybody. Everybody wants to live in Cape Town. Housing is a human right. However, it cannot be free." Speaking to access again, speaking to affordability. Some comments are about people living in Sisigo are breaking the law and is illegal. So there are many different opinions as to this, but the how is the big question.
I mean, Farida, the city of Cape Town itself, in its densification policy of 2012, states that there needs to be agglomeration within the city. There needs to be densification. There needs to be diversification. So basically meaning that there does need to be densification within the city, but also in that, how do we get mixed income groups within the city? In cities around the world, you will find mixed income groups. There is social housing in other cities. So it's not to say that the city must be a reserve for rich people only. That is not how cities work. And that's not how agglomeration works. So in South Africa and in especially the city of Cape Town, we still find apartheid spatial planning. And that is why the general public think that it is something that is normal. But if you go to any city across the world, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in Asia, there's diversity within cities.
I keep thinking about social housing because that's a part of the conversations that we've had before, and how people earning from this amount to this amount and then being able to qualify for that. When you speak and what you just said, is that on the basis of the bracket of those people that can afford to live that side, or is it on the basis of the government finding space that side that allows people this access?
The government and all its spheres have parcels of land. They have buildings within the city. So it is possible for them to take their parcels of land to create social housing. We're not saying that private land must be taken away from people and then that must be given to social housing. No, the government has land. It has land parcels and it has buildings. So they need to be the ones that are now creating social housing. That is how it works.
They need to be the one. And what's the time frame that we're looking at? Because there are, what was that number? 600,000 people waiting for homes, displaced, 14,000 homeless people on the streets. So we require immediate action.
Yes, of course, we do, Farida and Pillow. The real problem is that we're living in a city that prioritizes the needs of the wealthy, mainly white people. So we're still living in one of the most racist cities in the world. And until we realize that. And also what I want to say is that housing has been commodified. I mean, to live in areas like Woodstock and Salt River, where many people have lived for decades. I mean, generations of people's families were born there and were raised there. Generations of my family were born and raised in these inner city area surrounds. And so our lives were based there and are based there. Our traditions, our culture. And what really matters to us is that living heritage. I mean, buildings matter more to this government or this municipality than what people's lives really matter.
Karen, I think we're going to have to conclude it at, living, and reclaim your city and what means the most to us as people who are displaced. We have to conclude there is more important than the actual building. But thank you so much, Karen, for joining us, Inam, for joining us. Until we speak again next week, to have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
That was Inam Kula, architect, and Karen Hendricks from Reclaim the City, who is the leader of that social movement, speaking to us about the Centenary pain and the history, 100 years, and what this means and where we are currently. Up next is Reflections with Ayub Ali and Farida Rabia and Sokin Sinsi, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.